have you done for me lately? It's Coons, what have y'all done for us lately? And if there's no answer, the only thing we owe them.
Right. Good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk Too. And tonight, it's Tuesday night, as usual. Tuesday night, we usually do a scheduled show with our Sister Azima. Various topics. But tonight I know sometimes we get a lot of comments or questions towards Sister Azima in the chat. And I thought that we could have a very interesting, funny, open discussion. Just in reference to, just getting to know Sister Azima a little bit more. She doesn't particularly talk about herself, but one thing that I'm learning, and I hope that people in my generation are learning, is that oral tradition of history, culture, life lessons is very important in the Black American experience. And I say that because we have so many people feeling like the Black Native Americans don't have a very unique, distinct culture of their own. And throughout time, definitely within the last 100 years, we have seen an influx of immigration, right, wrong, or indifferent, where for some strange reason, a lot of the immigrant class don't understand that the Black Native American, however you choose to identify that with, is native, or some of them are indigenous to this land. And how, people could say an ethnic genesis was created. You could disagree with that theory or not, but the fact of the matter remains is that some of us, we can track our lineage back to before slavery. Some of us could track our lineage, one side of our lineage, to slavery. So to say that Black Americans are not native to this land would be very disingenuous and very untrue to people's experience. You never deny a person's experience. You never deny a person their lineage. And, we see online, definitely nowadays, where deanalyzation is very important. Saying who you are is important. If Sister Azima was to tell me and the things that I know about her, she should be proud to say where she's from and where she came from. You guys know the phrase, you came from good stock. That is a good phrase. That's a phrase that's admirable. That's a phrase that we should all be proud of when somebody comes from good stock. I know for me, I lost my father at a very young age, for him and myself. Mm-hmm. And up until the day, if I see people that know him, they call me his nickname, and then they'll start telling me about stories. And that's a pride thing, that they can share that information past to you. And it's very important that we hold on to it and understand that, we can get upset, feel like it's polarized and it's causing division within the melanated people. But in my belief, my personal belief is that we're all from different tribes and cultures, and we should be able to cohabit and coexist with one another, not denying any one of their unique experience or thinking that your experience is better than mine and mine is better than yours. And with understanding immigration and how it works in this country, is the reality is that melanated people that come to America, they may not even realize it, but they're coming here off of our sweat equity. They're coming here off of our sweat equity. And to be in our country, or to be in this country, and to not, as we would say, pay homage to those who blood, sweat, tears literally is the reason why they're in this country, is very disingenuous. So we need to continue to tell folks. We need to continue to educate folks. You go to Morocco, those Moroccans going to tell you their history. You go to Egypt, they're going to tell you the history. It may not be, uh, if you would say Arabs or the dark skinned Arabs or the black Arabs, but someone that knows is going to, someone that's native there is going to tell you their history, and so forth and so on. I grew up where people, where there was a lot of Italians. And literally, if you was not Sicilians, Sicilians would look at Neapolitans like, you full Italian, because they have their differences in their own culture. So understanding that we have Black Americans have a unique culture, and you see it, it's all lines. So I'm not gonna call names or say who's doing it and say who's right or who's wrong, but you have a right to stand up for your culture, your language, your history, your people. That is your right. And if anybody tries to deny that from you, you need to check them immediately. So, Sister Azima, you guys, is I'm gonna just say before I introduce her into the show, is sometimes people that grow up on the East Coast or the South, or family may have migrated out west, don't understand about St. Louis, East St. Louis area country, Middle America, as we would say, and its integral part in the Black American experience. You know, I was introduced by Sister Azima a little over a year ago. Well, more than a year ago, about a year and a half ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Time flying. About a year and a half ago, and she has been able to, you know, me and her have formed a relationship where she has been giving us information, giving me information. And like I said, she is a person from experience to being able to navigate, as I love to say, in Turtle Island. You don't get to her age by being dumb. You don't get to be in her age by not having some wisdom, not having some whereabouts how to move. Because one false slip, and we see it time and time again, one false slip in, as we would say, behind enemy lines, one false slip, and it could have been a bad situation. So when we see our Sister Azima, excuse the expression, I don't know how you feel about the expression, but when we see our elders, we need to, you know, lower the wing of humility, because they have forgotten more than most of us have seen. So tell us about these East St. Louis roots.
Well, we sit on the Cahokia Mountains, St. Louis City. The Cahokia Mountains was larger than most people realize. It was the size of the country of England, not not the city of London, but the entire country of England. The Cahokia Mounds was equal to that. So it was not uncommon for them to have between 50 and 100,000 people living within their quarters. They resided on both sides of the river, both the eastern side or the Illinois side, as well as the Missouri side. Um, and with that knowledge, they were, remember the seven pillars of what makes a culture and a society? They had embraced that truly. They had food storage as well as agriculture. They had hunting. They had a way to keep their houses warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Their houses were built mostly within the mounds so that when very bad weather came along, it did not impact them substantially. Like we just had that tornado in May of this year, and it devastated a large portion of the city of St. Louis, the downtown northern side of the city. So, knowing that with the Cahokia Mounds people, and they say that they'll overnight they disappeared, but what I'm thinking is that they were strategic about a lot of things, and they were very much in tune with what we consider the information from the cosmic calendar. Most of our people, we have to remember, I want you to put it in your mind that before white people became and were introduced, there were brown people here in various shades of brown. Everything from purple, blue, black to wheat. And that's who we were. And so we always found a way to get along. I'm not saying that we didn't have disagreements, but we didn't have to burn the city down. We didn't have to go in there and always be the menace to society. We always found a way to be amicable so that we can work with each other because we as a collective body of people understood and understood that I'm not here by myself. That whole stuff the European teaches you, you're a man unto yourself, an island all by yourself. I, for one, know that with all this education I have in my brain, I cannot build me a house. Okay. I'm not going to go out there and get under my car and fix it. I'm not going to go out here and lay power lines. So you have to be realistic. And in being realistic with that, we are interdependent people. And we understood that. That was the umbrella under which we operated. Remember, I told you the natural laws and all those things? Those are the natural laws you operated under. We didn't have a calendar like we have now and look at our horoscope. Oh, I'm Taurus. Oh, I'm Aries. Oh, I'm this. No, we looked at the cosmic calendar. We have the ability to read the stars as they migrated through our solar system. And as we migrated through our galaxy, we were able to look at those stars and go, oh, we're going into this period where you may call Orion or the god of war, Mars, or Aries, because you know that those are the times when the the changes, the barometric changes, okay, the frequencies that run through the planet and the galaxy upsets the weather. So we know that those are going to be some rough times. It wasn't like the God of War is here to, you know, pull down arrows and that kind of thing. They were basically saying these are the times in which we need to hunker down on our supplies, our inventory, get everything we need to make sure our people can be well because these are going to be um, troubling times, times of hardship. And it may last for a year or two because, when they say we're in the time of Leo, Leo lasted 13 years. So if you're in these cycles, because everything was based on cycles and cycles are based on rhythms, vibrations, and frequencies, we had an understanding of how to look at that, read that, And so when we say we have these shamans, that is a universal name to say that there was a branch of science that had the ability to read the cosmic charts and tell us, oh, we're going to be in this type of cycle. They couldn't tell you down to the minute, like they say with the tarot cards, but they can tell you this is a cycle you're going to be in. This cycle is going to last anywhere from a few months to maybe 15 years, but you would have to know you were in that cycle. And so by knowing that you're in those cycles, you prepare. So with the Cahokia Mounds people, they had a branch of science that looked at that and they prepared themselves. They also prepared themselves for leaving. Okay. Whether they migrated to other areas, that's not clear. Or if they found a way to satiate themselves in spiritually, all of them leave in a spiritual moment. That isn't determined either. But we do know that they did have burial mounds, but they had more of the mounds that provided housing, all forms of shelter, places where they can be educated. Okay, and we think of education where we can read and write. A lot of them had educations on how the earth worked, okay, how the cosmic cycles worked, the ability to understand that this is going to be a violent animal or it won't be, uh, how to navigate the seven rivers. There are seven rivers around us in this part of the Great Midwest. Everybody knows about the Mississippi, but we have the Missouri, we have the Red River, we have the Illinois River. Part of the Ohio River comes up in here. We have the Osage River, we have the Ozark River. So we have all of these rivers that converge right here. Literally, they do converge. They all come to the Missouri Mississippi River and empty. And then that goes down into Louisiana. They were also aware that there would be a time period in which a great, as they call it, the great shaking of the earth, which we call earthquakes, caused the Mississippi River to run backwards for a half a year to a year. So instead of it coming from, Montana, Minnesota, it was coming off of the Gulf of America, as Trump says, and it flowed up to that area. It also brought in a lot of fish and sediment and many other things. Um, the the Great Midwest, Missouri is touched by 8 states, and that's Iowa, Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, Nebraska, we Illinois. So we're touched by these states. And what we have found is that, like in the human body, your stomach is in the middle of your body, your heart, all your major organs are in the middle of the body. That is the safest place to be because it allows you to take time to digest and do what you need to do. It also gives you an opportunity to rest your mind and think. So they call this the Bible Belt because whatever systems you were brought up under became entrenched. I mean, entrenched. And you're going to live by that, and you systemically pass it down from one generation to the next. There may be a little modification here or there, but the overall rhythm and pattern is that we'll pass it on, and then everybody knows. Now, they said Missouri is the show me state, that's neither here nor there. What they're basically saying in the Great Midwest, which is all these 8 states that touch us, is that whatever systems that we're going to identify with, we're going to hang on to them. And it will become generational in teaching those systems down to your children. And we don't necessarily mean going to the church and learning it. It is the system of hard work, mind your business. If things are what we consider off kilter. That's how they say it here in the Great Midwest. It's off kilter. He wasn't quite right. She got her mouth moving in 12
How is
directions.
the landscape when it comes to dealing with people like from outsiders? If you got somebody from East, they come around there. How do they feel about outsiders?
You mean in terms of within the United States?
Yeah, just that just come around with whatever they come with.
Well,
How do they adapt to?
what normally happens is that people who come here from just the congruent 48 states of the United States, anybody that's coming here from California, the West Coast, Ohio, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, are all here along the Eastern Coast, Maine, Vermont, Delaware, Washington, D.C. We tend to look at them sideways, side eye, because we accept the fact that you live on coastal areas where a lot of people come in there. And what we look at is that, do you have any core foundations that you hang on to? That's the first thing we look at. If we don't see those core foundations, then we take you with a grain of salt, because we know that you will blow with the wind. And we can't have that. We've always kind of pushed many people who came from the coastlands out of our politics because they cannot see how our politics are rooted in what we consider common sense. Now,
So
unfortunately, Missouri was considered a
is it
slave state, huh?
is more of a conservative? Is it more of a conservative landscape or super liberal or?
Well, I hate to use those words because
But
I would say it's more balanced.
oh,
Let me put it this way, it's more balanced because there are some laws on our books, and let me just throw one or two out here. At, at no time can men be sheep herders because the autonomy of the female sheep is the same as the female body. And these men were mating. So we have laws against them. We have these blue laws. And so when I say we're not, people say we're conservatives, and some will say, oh, you're kind of liberal. We try to be kind of balanced because we know that you must be able to see things open minded enough to allow new concepts and ideas to come in that serve the benefit of all. See, we're not here just to serve me. The way people in the Midwest look at it, it's going to benefit all of us. Okay. If Farmer Mac is struggling, and I didn't say struggling, I said struggling. That's how we talk. If he's struggling, then we're going to go and help him
mhm,
get his farm up, get it moving. Okay. We have Amish communities. They go along the same lines. We have Quaker communities here. They go along the same lines. We have a lot of people in the foothills of the Ozarks, and we say foothills because they're not 13,000 feet in the air, but these mounds are pretty good. You know, you can get up 6,000 feet in some of these mounds. So we are, we're, we try to be very balanced, even if it's wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? Even if they were brought up with a prejudiced viewpoint, they may be prejudiced towards you based on how you speak or your color of your skin or on a female. But don't don't put your hands on a woman. That's out of line. What's wrong with you? Open the
yeah.
door. Be polite. Where's chivalry? And I would see some of the old white men tell even the young black men, open that door. Boy, open that door for that woman. Well, they didn't call us women, they called us girls. Open that door for that girl. What you doing? Why you just standing there? Where are your manners? And so even in their prejudice, they try to be balanced. Okay. And then they do fight hard for maintaining their narrow viewpoint. But even the black folks are the same way. They fight hard for their narrow concept of viewpoints of things. We are slow to release um, systems that have been inbred in us. But when we do test the water and find out that it sits well with us, we embrace it wholeheartedly. But you just can't come up in here being ridiculous. Okay,
Yeah.
it's not acceptable because by you being ridiculous and off the cuff, you are disrespectful to your own, and that's how we looked at it. You're out of line. You're being disrespectful to your own ethnic people. You're being disrespectful to your own family. What's wrong with you? Okay, and so we're one of these places that all they you hear the old women tell them boys, pull your pants up. I don't want to see your underwear.
Oh, so that's still prevalent where the elders can say something to the younger people
They
like
say
that.
it, and then some of them get kind of crazy and rear their guns. And I've seen some of them old people pull their gun out and lay it on the counter, and the boys go like, "Oh shit,
I
okay."
got that right.
So I mean, it's not like we still have a frontier mentality
Okay.
where we know that we have to do for self. We don't always know when we do come together, we come together for the greater good, not just for the certain clusters of people. We come together for the greater good. I don't have to like you, but I don't want to see your house burnt down. So I'm going to get out here and make sure you get things that you need. So you're
So
not.
it's very communal
It is
community.
right.
And the reason why, Sister Azima, I wanted to discuss that aspect is because with the internet, with social media, we we tend to have good evening, Jane. We tend to have a very jaded view of not just the world, but just America alone, where we think I'll just use me from the Northeast. Until I started traveling and understanding how different areas go about, we
Mm-hmm.
tend to think every area is just like the area that we're used to, or the area that we were raised in. And I remember, and this was just in New Jersey alone. I had some friends from what we consider South Jersey. That's
Mm-hmm.
Atlantic City. It's down there by Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And very close friend of mine that I have from Atlantic City, he said some things to me about North Jersey and people. And
Mm-hmm.
it appeared to come off kind of offensive when he said it.
Mm-hmm.
He was giving me some game, as we would say.
Mm-hmm.
And after a couple of years, I sat back and I thought about what he said, and I started noticing he was right.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
North, definitely that Northeast. If you're from the Northeast, we have a in your face, go fast mentality where if you're not from the Northeast, it will come off totally different than what you think it is.
I
And
know.
you're
I lived in New York for a year. I was not prepared. I was like, oh no, geez, but that's how you all are.
and it's really because it's really crazy because when you look at it, and I said when you go other places,
Mm-hmm.
you're really like, as they would say, you were really, and I'm not speaking bad about where I'm from in no shape or form, but you are accustomed to being in a doggy dog world
Okay.
where you could come off as very selfish, very self-centered. I
Mm-hmm.
got to get mine. Nobody else can get theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go other places and you hear it, we go down south, we hear the Southern hospitality, and
Mm-hmm.
people say hello, and
Yeah, but
people,
baby, they sneaky. That's the one thing about the South. People in the South are sneaky. Think about it. They smile in your face. They talk nice to you. Yeah, I got you, but they are not above. No, I'm not going to say above. There is nothing. They love the gossip, and the rumor mill is deep there, and it destroys you. It'll either make you or break you. That's the South. The Great Midwest is not that. These are Bible toting people. Okay. If Jesus and God didn't say do it, you're not gonna do it. Okay. And God said, have humility, help others. You may
And you
not
know,
like Mr. So and so, but you're gonna help.
and Sister Azima, that is one of the things that they kind of try to get to understand now is when you understand that quote unquote Midwest and understand, like you said, the Bible toting people, the people that everything is based off of religion and this is what they believe and how they intermingle with other people. And then when you have people that, like I said, from my area who are very, the biggest phrase I think in my area is uh what, I, what they call it what don't concern me, what don't harm me don't concern me, some crazy phrase that we used to say,
Hmm.
but basically you could do what you want to do.
Hmm.
It's basically you do you, I do me.
Hmm.
And I remember me and Randy had a conversation, Dr. Short, for those in the chat, where that type of mentality is so real up north in northeastern part of the country that they feel that way about everything, even about crime. That long as it don't affect them,
Hmm.
they don't care.
Okay, so here's what I used to tell people when I've lived quite a few places, and I would always say the continental United States of America. The East Coast is the head, the Midwest is the body, and the West Coast are your feet. This up here has got to be on point all the time. It's always
Mm.
like that. You know, right, wrong, indifferent. You're always amassing and assimilating information. But once it gets in there and you computerize it on where it has to go, I'm not going to send information pertaining to my eyes to my stomach. So it disseminates what it has to do. That's what you all do on the East Coast. And then you send it to us and we digest it and send it down, to what we call the Great Southwest and the Western Coast. Okay. Because your feet don't always have to run as fast as your brain. And so that's why you get to see this hustle bustle stuff on the East Coast and the multitudes of people that come in bringing their cultures and their languages and all of that. But then when you get to the great Midwest, it filters out. And even in the great Midwest with Minnesota, you got 70,000 Somalians there. Okay. In Missouri, we've got 102,000 um, Central American people from Nicaragua, Mexico, all of that. They live here. Okay. They act like us with their Mexican accent. And I laugh because it's great to hear. Okay.
So they, and that's a whole different topic that I really look forward to discussing real soon. Is because I do believe that one of the major problems that's going on now, it is a war of assimilation, and getting
Well,
immigrants to understand that it's a culture that's already here.
it's a war of assimilation because let's back up. Everyone had to assimilate under white rule. Everybody had to assimilate under the white domination rule of the United States of America. Now people are coming in here and they realize that it isn't the white man that's ruling it. It was really us, the melanated skinned people. The role that we've played. And they can't erase it because they're digging up history and now they can't say, oh, Like everybody believes that the first car was made by Ford, but it was made by William Patterson, a black man. You never heard about it. Okay. GPS is by us. We gave you the first computer.
What
Okay.
do you anxious questions, Neiman? And I know well sometimes we have these
Built by
conversations.
a black brother and sister.
They
Designed, developed, and built by a black brother and sister. The
they
ship.
they tend to go a different way, but right. What do you think? What do you think? Um, the role that we have played with, and I'm not saying that we are. Do you think it's our fault why people don't think that Native Black Americans have a culture?
Mm. No. Um, how can I? How do I want to address this? The role of melanated people across the planet, we have always been the moral compass of this world, the whole world. The darker we were, the more moral the compass was. You, I'm a parent, you're a parent. Okay. My parents wanted something better for me. My grandfather was a slave. So he didn't want his children to be a slave. Okay, so he introduced them to a different mindset. The same thing I went with my children. I wanted to introduce them to different concepts. But even when we introduce our children to different concepts, what's the one thing we always hold dear? Community, family, and spiritual understanding. It's built in, it's our foundation. I don't care if you live in Maine or Florida, okay? Hawaii or Guam, California, Louisiana, Missouri, Illinois. That is how we are. We have always been that way. You've never looked back and saw, I know there was tension between Madam C.J. Walker and the other woman that introduced her to the hair care product, but both of them wanted the same thing. They wanted to not only expand their business, but to allow Black women to have a way to move themselves forward. Because, they're coming out of Reconstruction, all that kind of stuff. That's what we want. That doesn't mean that's what all of us want, but that tends to be the predominating piece here. So long before there was slavery, we were already traveling back and forth to the Americas, South America, Central America. The Olmecs were in Central America. But the white man gives it credit to the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Incas, but the Olmecs were there before them. Okay. Even in South America. So we have always been the moral compass. When you got to North America, which includes Canada, they wanted to say, we're going to lump these people in with the Asians because they got the slant eyes or the extra eye. Okay. Because never, ever did the controlling society wanted you to know anything different. Their whole process is that there's good and bad, and we were the bad, and they were the good. What they failed to understand is that the wonderful internet, because I remember when it was just America Online and you had to dial up, woo, I remember that. And there was like a whisper. Nobody was online because it wasn't a concept anybody dealt with. So once we got that established and we were able to put it on phones, everything blew apart. We could go and research all the stuff you had lied to us about. And then we were able to pull the data out. There were indigenous Black people because we were the dominant group on the planet. So there have always been indigenous Black people here in North America. Columbus never even found North America. He got the Caribbean islands. That's nowhere near North America. You see what I'm saying? But We have always had that premise that family, community, and spiritual understanding was paramount for us. Paramount for us. I mean, right now, look at a lot of the young brothers who, are athletes. They're athletes for what, 5 years? They get their money. Who was this one guy? Oh, I want to say his name. His last name is Stewart. 16 years ago, he walked away from football. They gave him a $35 million contract. He kept it for, I think it was for 9 years. He did it for 6. He said, just take the difference and keep it. And he went and started farming. And he gives his food away, called faith farming or something like that. And he's been doing it for years. Okay. And so that is what happens with us. We have been here. Indigenous people that were melanated have been here. That's why the Khalifa women, which California is named after, they were the Amazon, the original Amazon. They stood 7 feet tall. They were very dark complected. They had dreads, or short hair, or locks. They were that. We had always been here. Crow, Blackfoot, that's describing the people. Okay. Shoshone, that's describing the color of their skin. So the bottom line is that we've always been here because we were the dominant people. And even now, if you go and look at um, world stats and put in total population, they'll say 7.89 billion. And then you ask how many of them are not black and brown people, and they'll tell you something like 8.999, you know, and I just rounded up 1 billion of them. There's 8 billion of us on this planet. 7 billion of them look like you and me, and 1 billion looks like the white man. So
Yeah.
when they had an opportunity to be in control, the um, the system that they put into to control, they had to make sure that we had to see everything their way, and now they can't any longer. So the Great Midwest has always been, and not just the Great Midwest, there are other countries in the middle of Europe which hangs on to traditions, as they say, the established protocols. And what it does is that it allows everything else around them, all the other states around us, to function like they should, but they always know that home is going to be there. And home is the safety net.
It's
And
funny.
huh?
Reason why I actually got on, we had talked about immigration and stuff like that, is because what I find interesting is, even I don't know why people don't do it, right? But I know for me, when you travel, when you go places, you try to navigate or understand. So, for example, if I came to St. Louis, okay, yeah, I know you, but I would try to figure out how to move.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm in your
How to
area,
function within that city's protocol.
and I always find it interesting that we have all this that's going on, and a person that says they're an immigrant, a person that's from a foreign land,
Hmm.
would come to a land,
Hmm.
come to any space, and not understand how to move from the definitely the melanated people that are already there. Looking at it from black a black or white thing, even if, like I said, if I was to jump on a plane and go to St. Louis, Sister Azima, I'm such and such. Even if you don't see me, I'm such and such. I'm going to go get something to eat. Should I go there? Should I'm going to ask you, from somebody who knows the area, am I in a good area? Am I safe in this area? Do I have to worry about how I got to navigate? So I always find it interesting how some immigrants, majority of the ones that I've came across, unfortunately, they're so dismissive towards Native Black Americans when it
Because
comes.
in the immigration process, when I was working with NASA, we had people that came to us from Mexico, Nicaragua, from Brazil, from Haiti, from the Caribbean islands, okay, Grenada, and they were all melanated. They weren't white, they were all melanated. what is told to them is that all they saw was lily white America. That's all that was published on television.
That was in the show.
Right. Then when they got here, they were told if they want to keep their green card, they must never, ever associate themselves with us or intermingle with us. Don't you dare marry because we will ship you away. And it was ingrained in them. That is why you see them act a certain way with us. Because if they want to do that, and then here's something else you have to understand. They're also told they have a right to start a business, but they can only put that business in poor Black neighborhoods. Listen to what I said. They can only put their businesses in poor Black neighborhoods. That's why you see so many Asian restaurants. That's why you see all of the cell phones controlled by the Arabs. That's why you see many of these nail shops, which at one time were Black owned by East Indians. Because if they need to do business, they must only do it with us. Why? Because we are the biggest spenders of money. We turn money over faster than anybody else. And we know how to make money better than anybody else. So if they need to do anything, it must be done with us. Now go out in the white neighborhoods. You know where they are. And see, tell me how many, Ching Fong or Fong Yu restaurants you're going to see. How many of those places do you see T-Mobile going in there to get you? Come on now. Let's be realistic.
You can't even get nothing to eat after 7 o'clock.
Yes, you can if you go in a restaurant that doesn't have, price tags on their menu. You can. You can. But I'm just saying.
I'll be working late. When I'll be working late, right? And I call you and be like, look, I'm working late.
Right.
I'm going to be in the house late. I got to make sure I got my lunch and everything.
Yeah.
Usually, if I know before I even leave the house, if I be like, look, I'm going to be late. Before I even leave the house, you got to see all this food I'll be having. My partner at work, they sometimes be like, why you got us? I'm like, listen, man, y'all don't realize it. After 7:30, we be in certain areas, man. They don't be
can't go eat. No.
You go. The only place you got is a truck stop or a gas station.
Right.
But yeah, I'm definitely aware that I know about customs. I lived close to Newark Airport, so I know how they are with immigration. I have a real good friend of mine. He's Haitian, and he tells me about the experience and what they're told as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've intermingled with enough immigrants that they are told that they're told that at customs don't deal with the Black people, don't because we're not on the brochure of Welcome to America.
No, because what happens is that they get an opportunity to really see how we are, and we don't live up to the hype. It wasn't until I had a chance to go to Australia, the hype about us is devastating. It's absolutely devastating. We are so murderous. It's not uncommon for us to murder our children and just leave them in the streets. This is the kind of crap they get to hear. And then they personify it by editing newsreels or movies in such a manner that this is all they see. So they're very afraid of us. And then when you get to know us, we're not that at all. Okay? Not that at all. Not the majority of us. We're not that. But you have to have a boogeyman, and we're the boogeyman. And the irony of it is that I had twin brothers. One of my twin brothers passed away. I didn't have twins, but I have twin brothers. And one of them passed away, and he would travel. He would travel. He was like me. He traveled, and he'd call me up and say, "Hey," he said, "Baby, guess what?" He said, "I'm in France, and I got arrested." I said, "What'd you get arrested for?" He thought I was Arabic. I'm like, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Until I opened my mouth, he knew I was an American." He said, "You're Arab." I'm like, "No, dude, I'm from St. Louis," and they let me go. But they thought he was Arabic. And I don't. When I had traveled, I had to go to a tracking station near South America. These men were running up to me and they were speaking Portuguese, and I'm like, "I'm from America." They go like, "What?" And they showed me pictures, and I looked just like their Portuguese women. And I'm like, I'm from America. I'm from America. And
You guys,
so,
you guys in the chat, if y'all got any questions for Sister Azima,
uh,
I
so
mean, she's talking about, her cultural experience in St. Louis and so forth, and we're just having an open discussion. Actually, usually Sister Azima, she want to send me bad weather at least once a week,
oh yeah,
so it's
works good.
quiet.
Keeps
It's
you
been
good.
brutally cold, brutally cold. I'm off work for a couple days, but it's cold. It is. I tell you, Sister Azima, I feel unfortunately what's going on and how the country is changing. The politicians, how they're changing their posture towards our homeless people. If you know someone that needs a place, I know they got a lot of the code blues is going on now throughout the country where, because of the freezing temperatures, if you know somebody that's homeless, try to get them to a shelter, a place, because
I, I have a I have a whole piece. I'm gonna hold my mouth till you finish.
well, it's brutally cold outside. No, go ahead.
Okay, that's a joke. These politicians haven't changed anything. They just got their panties in a bunch because Trump has exposed them. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you why. In St. Louis, we had the second largest facility. There had been an old hotel in downtown St. Louis. It was bought up by Reverend Wright, an evangelical guy. And it was a huge building. It was 33 floors. It sat next to the old Shell building. He had his television station out of there. He trained people on how to do camera positionings and all of that. This is before we have this new technology. They also learned how to drive buses. People who were homeless could come there. There was always shelter. The state and the city, he had applied, got some of their monies and loans and grants, was getting his building up, and they decided he was a bad guy. And they began to look for, my thing is, if you turn everything over, you're going to find the dirt you're looking for. So they
Mm.
started looking. It took them 19 years to close him down. He had already been functioning 12 years. And it was rare that you would see people in the winter, even in the summer, being on the streets because he was finding ways for them to work. He had gone further out of Missouri and had set up a farm. They were out there learning how to manage farm, do the whole agricultural piece, and then getting the products back into the city, getting them into stores. I mean, he had a good plan. Okay, I'm not going to say all of it was successful, but he had a good plan. And he had approached. Took him 19 years. They finally found a way to totally condemn the building by not giving him the funds that he needed or the time to fix it up. And they got him out. They shut him down. Shootings at Brown University and in the Bondi Beach. Um, and they shut him down. Not one politician, not one state representative, not one senator from Missouri, not even our local folks stood up for him. Okay.
Uh,
And then I think about just walk backwards 5 years ago, 2020, the young white man in California. Um, I think he worked for one of those, I think he was in tech. computer tech stuff. He was taking about $800 and he was building these little 1 unit buildings for people. He got permission to use a parking lot that was adjacent to a vacant shopping mall. And he got permission to put the houses there. Went down and got it all from, I think it was in Oakland, California, wherever he was, got permission, got it all set up. And what it did is that he had worked with somebody to bring in a truck where they could go and shower and have toilet use. Okay. Maxine Waters jumped out there and said, no, it was horrible. She went after him hook, line, and sinker, came with bulldozers and bulldozed the houses down. Now the politicians have their friends. Oh, I'm going to open up Mission Bank homes for homeless people. I'm going to open up such and such a place for these people. But that's because you're a part of those politician friends.
Hmm?
And the city or state is paying you 2 or 3 million. This man, everybody that was helping homeless people, they were digging in their pockets, doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And the places looked nice. They had solar energy, you had lights, you had a way to heat, you had a little tabletop, you know, hot plate to eat, you had a way to lock it, and you had an address so they can get whatever they needed. And he had made arrangements with the post office to make sure got to them because it had a mailbox on the front. He had done his due diligence, and they bulldozed him down. Same thing with the woman who was in Hawaii. They bulldozed her stuff down. And you had some black folks in Atlanta who were doing the same thing. So I don't want to hear about what the politicians think about homelessness. They have 22 years to fix it. I lost my cousin to homelessness because when he came back from the Vietnam War, they did nothing to help him. He lived on the streets and he took his life. So I don't want to hear about that because you knew we had come to you. I had gone to Jefferson City in Missouri. I had written and done all my stuff, and you just did that. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and we got nothing done. But you wait until Pelosi and get their buddies up in there, and now it's a big thing. It's a
Mm.
joke. It's a joke.
So,
Now about the shooting
you know about the
at
shooting
Brown
in
University.
Brown University, Bondi.
Okay, here's what I want to say to you. Every time you have a shooting like that, it's a tragedy. Don't get me wrong, it's a tragedy. But what is the United States government hiding? Because when they had that shooting in Florida, what was that, 8 years ago at the nightclub? Later, it turned out they were trafficking children right through that same nightclub. So, what are they hiding? What is going on at Brown University that it would become the target of shootings? That's what we need to ask. Why did this shooting occur on this day at Brown University? Why? What happened at Brown University that it became the target of these shootings? Things that we're not aware of. So like right now on YouTube, have you noticed that they have been disclosing something called SWAT Chronicles or SWAT Survival or SWAT reports? And it's literally what's going on with the SWAT teams. And it's everywhere, even in the college campuses. And I thought it's very interesting because this is freedom of information. And you'll see the FOIA report there and the things that are redacted, which means it's blocked out. You can't read it for public consumption. But it's the things that we already know about. So, what is going on at Brown University that made it a target? Because after Biden got into office and he scripted away the money that Trump had set aside in his first presidency, that all black kids could go to school free as long as they attended, a historically black college. They didn't have to pay anything. And then it all vanished under the Biden administration, wiped it out. So we need to ask what is going on at Brown University to bring about this shooting. It's, to me, it's a bigger picture, a bigger problem. We just don't know what that bigger picture is. And I find that Sandy Hook was another thing. Each time we have these big major shootings, what is really going on? What are we missing? Could it have been prevented? Does anybody know? I'm asking. Could it have been prevented? Does anybody know if there's anything else going on that we were not aware of? Because I've noticed that whenever Waco, Texas, when they burned those people in Waco, Texas, when the building burned down and those 13 children were burned to death, okay? When they burned the headquarters in, was it New Jersey? And they were just, I have learned that our government or politicians, if they have a different agenda, they'll have something over here happening and we're looking this way and we're missing what we really need to see. So I don't know. My question is, if any of you know, what else was going on at Brown University to bring this about? What were they digging into? What were they doing that was different? Did they develop an archaeological society to go and dig up stuff to validate any of the things that deal with us and the indigenous black people that were here, not the $5 Indians? Do any of you know? Because I'm always asking.
One of the things about the shootings that I thought was very interesting is it literally was a blip on the radar. It happened, and they're not talking about it as much as they usually do. So for Gene, I will answer your question. That is my thought. That was there usually when you have a major university, Brown University, for those that don't know, is in Connecticut. Very popular university for people from the Northeast. Connecticut is not a big state at all, very small. However, if it's a shooting on a college campus, it would be big national news all over, coverage everywhere. It's not a lot of coverage on these shootings.
No, because they are distractions.
Like Sister Azima said, that sometimes, even though these things are tragedies, when anybody dies, it's a tragedy.
Yes.
Sometimes the news cycle will pick it up just to put something else down for a second. Because we are in a country nowadays where our news cycle is not 24 hours. Our news cycle is 60 seconds.
Right.
Whatever you can get before the screen, they used to say something in news media, if it bleeds, it leads.
Correct.
So that if they got violence, that's going to lead the news. So they'll go on to the next story with no problem. We need people to, like yourself, Jane, and myself, Sister Azima, those in the chat, to begin to ask these questions, to ask why, give us answers. We should be demanding answers to all that we need to know, instead of allowing a lot of stuff to get thrown under the rug, not being aware of what's going on. Because believe you me, there is a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts, and all of us can't fight every fight. But if
No,
you
it's
fight
not for us
fight
to
over
do
here
that.
and I'm fighting this fight over here, and
Mhm.
you telling me what's going on, I'm telling you what's going on, we can all know what's going on, but everybody has a part in this thing.
Mhm.
Because trust me,
Mhm.
there are a lot of moving parts going on. It's sometimes, and I speak about it when you talk about doing stuff, content creating, talking
Mhm.
about current events.
Mhm.
When I do stuff with the guys, with the fellas, with Pat Talk, and we'll have a discussion. It's so much stuff we could talk about that we haven't even been able to address because it's always something going on. It's
Mhm.
literally too much. Me myself,
Mhm.
Jane, and this will bring it back to the conversation that me and Sister Azima is having. I don't watch mainstream news. I may watch a segment at the most, but I haven't watched mainstream news since Ferguson, Missouri.
Mhm.
And the reason why is because I realized that people can create a narrative that they want you to believe.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ferguson, which Sister Azima is very, very aware of Ferguson. She'll explain it after I finish of her and the Mike Brown situation if she chooses to speak about it.
Mhm.
When that happened, you got so many different reports, but everybody said they was reporting the news
Mhm.
because they were creating a narrative instead of telling the truth.
Mhm.
Because telling a narrative or creating a narrative for most news nowadays has nothing to do with if it's true or false.
Right.
They want to create a narrative. They want to create. That's why when you watch TV, me and you could be watching TV for entertainment, but
Mhm.
within those credits, they'll tell you it's a program. They're
Mhm.
programming us. They're programming us to have a narrative about something. And it could just, for me and you, it could just be, oh, I'm watching Grey's Anatomy about a hospital and all these characters, but they're programming you to think this is what goes on in the medical field.
Well,
So
I'm gonna throw a couple of things out here. I just kind of scanned what was going on and read some stuff. The person that was shot, his name was Muhammad Aziz, and the suspect looked white. Then the Bondi Beach, they were at a Hanukkah event, and that suspect was white. How much of you all know about George Soros and Antifa? I want you to start looking him up and reading about him. He is the one that funded at American University the whole class on communism, fascism. Okay, he funds it and he pays for people to be there. The three black females that supposedly were running Black Lives Matter, and they were not because it was ground roots and it grew up from here, Missouri. It wasn't national; it was grassroots. The bottom line is that all three of them were on scholarship to American University. That is where people like Netanyahu went to our college, um, Saddam Hussein, Idi Amin, um, Noriega. They all went there. Okay.
Sister, for those in the chat, I know why are you able to say where Black Lives Matter started from?
Because I was here when it happened. My brother and those family members kind of brought it about because we were tired of being in Missouri. The state of Missouri was already under what they call receivership because Missouri was still using old style practices. Deception in the world. We are getting to a point. And here's the thing about deception, fiction, and all of that. Stop looking at it. It's a fight among white people. It's not our fight. It's not our fight. It's their fight. And they're losing the fight because we don't care. I don't care. Okay. And the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Remember that. The opposite of love is not hate, because hate, love, sadness, that's all on the same scale. That's an emotion.
How far are you from Ferguson?
Right now, I'm 2 miles from Ferguson.
How
Where
far are
I
you from?
was, I could walk out my back door, go down my hill, and go, hey, that's where Ferguson was.
So for you guys in the chat, the reason why I asked Sister Azima that is she is from what we would say, what they would say on the news. She's from Ground Zero.
Yeah. And so Mr. Wilson, Darren Wilson, was not out there on a call for Mike Brown doing drugs or stealing anything from Ferguson Market. They had a close relationship. They were doing business with him, and he was selling marijuana. And they would sell it for him and pay him their cut, however he had that set up. Mr. Darren Wilson had been on what they call a support call. And if you don't know much in the medical profession, when the EMTs show up at a house and they can't get in the door, they are not allowed to break the door down. They have to call a police officer and they have to go through that process. Darren had been called for that. And that's a support call. So the EMTs were called. There was a medical situation. They couldn't get in the building and they had to, because they could break the door down, but then all the red tape that goes with it. So the police officer has to be that point of entry. And he has to go in and enter and make sure everything is clear.
Let me ask you, Sister Azima,
Mhm.
and trust me, I may smile and I may chuckle when I ask this question, but in no way am I minimizing Mike Brown's death
Mhm.
or anyone else that died. Anybody that knows me know that I have a strong appreciation for Darren Seals
Mhm.
and the rest of the original activists that got burnt up
Yeah.
mysteriously.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm gonna always keep their memory
Mhm.
fresh as much as I
Mhm.
can. Let me ask you, Sister Azima, when that happened and you guys start to realize that this thing is about to get national attention and
We
how
never
all
realized that. We never realized that. Because when you're in it, you don't realize it. When I had to march on Gary, Indiana, and I was in it, you don't realize it. That's not what you're after. What you were after was the fact that this man, you're on your knees, you got your hands in the air, and you shoot him 4 times.
mm,
And then you bring a blacked out SUV to the crime scene and you put Darren in it. Now, let me back up and say something. My brother was a deputy sheriff. My family, my father was an inventor who became a politician. I kind of invented some things, but I went to work with NASA. Um, my mother was a nurse. I listened to what my cousins and brothers would say. They didn't bag his hands. They didn't bag his gun. All the little stuff you hear them say, and you're looking for that. You roll up with this vehicle. You put him in. His hands are like mine. They're not bagged because you got to get the residue off of them, the gun residue. You got to do all of that. They're not bagged. They let that young brother lay in the sun 6 hours. It was a hot day. It was in August. Temperature was already hitting 104.
mm.
Mother could not come down there. She's there bawling her eyes out. And what does the chief of police do? He He has them come in there and put up concrete barricades like you see on the highway to barricade the area off, because the way the area was set up, you know how you go into what they call cul-de-sac areas, but then there are streets that dart off from the cul-de-sac. That's how it was back up in there, because it was houses and then apartment complexes. And then you can sneak through and come out and you get to a street where they have restaurants and all of that kind of, commercial district area. And you could do that instead of going to the main street like West Florissant or Chambers Road. You could snake around in the back and get where you have to go without hitting all of the stoplights. So he had it barricaded off. And he barricaded the area in which I lived in off, forcing me to only be able to enter and exit one way. And then they took the entire mall where there was a Schnucks, which is like Vons or whatever you all have there, the Schnucks and the Walmart and that area, and they made it their staging area. And the tanks had come in and the SWAT teams were there, and they were carting us day and night. At that time, I had retired from NASA and had retired from doing hospice services. And my name was still listed because I had just recently retired. And I was trying to work from home because I didn't want to do much of anything else. I was reaching my golden years. And he shut off the internet. He had them come and remove every mailbox. That is what you do in a military situation. He was setting up, the chief of police, Smith, was setting up to do a hostile takeover of the Black community. This is what you didn't see on television. I had to be home before it got dark. No place. There was Jack in the Box up there, the crabfish people up there. Tons of places where you can just stop. You can eat. All of that was shut down at 6 o'clock, including the grocery store, including the filling stations. Had them turn the pumps off at 6:30. This is not the stuff you see on television. So my brothers and them came up because they were ex-military. Taught them how to prepare yourself so you don't have pepper spray and all that stuff and smoke bombs, tear gas. We knew how to outfit ourselves to protect ourselves from that. Okay? And we always made sure we had our hands in the air. Everybody had a armband on. So if the light hits it, it's going to reflect. It's got your name, your date, all that stuff. Those were our dog tags. Because they were shooting. The peacekeepers came and stood on top of the building and aimed at the police. Because the police were shooting in the air. The young brothers, who we call, they brought their pit bulls, their Rottweilers, their cane corsos, and the police had to take a step up. They stepped back. The area in which they were trying to define us is also the area where you had an entire community of retired police and retired military. What are you thinking? You knew that. So, and then they just started spidering out. And these randoms, I'm so fearful. That's where you get this stuff now where they talk about we have to arrest you for misuse of police resources when you just call in and say it's a Black person. That came up out of that. Okay. But going back to that, Missouri had a history. We did not have well-trained police officers because it was still a mom and pop type of environment. Old Steve Smith, I owe him a favor. Let his son work on, and we had all these little cluster towns, Bell Ridge and High Ridge, and you had Garden View, all these Dalewood. You had all these little tiny townships where they may have only had three police officers, 3 to 4 police officers running their police state, you know, office 24/7. Okay. But they were required to check in with the city of St. Louis. Because we have like 52 to 55 small little townships and counties, and a lot of them were just hiring. Ferguson was the same. They hired their policeman. Their chief of police was the only one that had training. We decided that they would have to go to college and have a background in law, okay? Criminal law and constitutional law. Because that had not occurred, we had a whole lot of this driving while black, walking while black that was going on. And people were getting tickets. Even I got tickets. And I'd go in and I'd always ask, what jurisdiction am I under? And the judge would raise his head, because only people who know the Constitution have the right to ask that. Because it tells you how you address the judge. Do you call him judge, or do you say your honor? Because what you all don't realize is every time you walk into a courtroom and you see the American flag and it's got the gold fringe, you are now under military law. And you must address them under that title. When it is not there, you have to address them as your honor, like you would if you were talking to the King and Queen of England. When it's there, you have to say judge. And you must ask under what jurisdiction, because those documents that you bring, you must show them the document and shut your mouth. And so these are the things we started teaching our people here. And so what happened is that we were, St. Louis City and County had been sanctioned. We will be coming up, the sanction will end in 2030. It was for 30 years. So it came in 2000. And the prosecuting attorney at that time was already angry because his father had been killed by some black folks. And I'm thinking, there's a whole bunch of our folks been killed by white people. Do you see us running around? Let's get them. Okay, so the sad part is that you never know what's behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
They're never going to tell you what's behind the scenes.
So, you guys, glad that Sister Azima, she was able to share that. And basically, like I said, sometimes we have to understand, and I'm glad that Jean asked the questions, because we were able to go into not only the Sister Azima from the St. Louis area, but she was, like I said, she was there at ground zero when this Mike Brown situation happened, and knowing the atmosphere prior and during all that stuff from somebody that was there is important. Because, like she said, this police chief created he made a bad situation even worse. And you see that many, many times where people that are in law enforcement, they panic. They don't know, and they create a worse situation. But appreciate Sister Azima as usual. This was a good Tuesday. Good for you.
Let me say this one last thing. If you see on the police car where it says accredited, it means that those police officers had to go in and learn constitutional law. It's required. And you're going to always address them with their title, which is officer, and then their last name. You still have some diehards from the old method, and you're still going to have some that are just belligerent. But it allows us to have better dialogue. Okay. Since then, the police around here, they approach you with respect.
And it's very, very important. And Sister Azima was telling us about St. Louis, but that goes for anywhere in, as I would like to say, and I always say, Turtle Island. in this land, because we need to understand that some of the laws that are here have never abrogated the laws that was here prior.
No.
And knowing who you are, knowing how to address when you have to intermingle with law enforcement, judges, any time you're dealing with court, probate court, for you guys that know about probate court, it's a whole different thing. Probate court could be interesting, you guys. We'll talk about that one day. We'll have a whole show talking about probate court and having wills and estates and trust and stuff like that. It can be very, very tricky. So I appreciate you guys in the chat. Glad we could have this discussion. Appreciate you guys always showing up, showing out. Trust me, I don't take it for granted. Sister Azima don't take it for granted.
Thank you for the questions. Thank you.
Question was really good, Gene. And tomorrow I will be doing another show on mental health, dealing with melanated Black women.
Yeah.
And its effects. We did a couple weeks ago, me and Professor Drea did Black men, but tomorrow we'll discuss Black women and understanding how mental health affects us as Black people in America. One thing that I'm gonna say, and I love to say, is that our brother Hoshimad, who I have met online through Dr. Winters, he always says nothing is wrong with Black people. Something happened to Black people.
That's true. That's true. Because if something was wrong with us, it would show systemically in our children, every generation. Okay. But, slavery was 400 years. It's in a blink of an eye, but it's the worst 400 years. And if you don't believe me, go and look at how they treated their people in Rome, which is a mirror image of what they did here. We were a mirror image. Thank you.
With that, until then, we'll see you guys. And me and Sister Azima, hopefully I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Take care. Have a great night.